Please tell me if you're here on the roll call. Bob Sanders?
Here.
Ginger Hockenberger? Bridget Wilson? Jane Polanski? Here. Joanna Gupton?
Here.
Sharon Armstrong?
Here.
John Lawless?
Here.
And Tim Potter. Okay. We do have a quorum, so I declare this meeting in order. We do have to approve the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting minutes of November the 29th, if I can get a motion for that.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes from the previous meeting on November 29th.
I
get a
second. Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes to approve the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting minutes for November 29th. I would also like to have a motion to approve the January 23rd Board of Zoning Appeals.
Make a motion to approve January 23rd's meeting.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to approve the January 23rd Board of Zoning Appeals meeting agenda has been passed. We do have some old business, and do you want me to, I'm going to cover the old business before I get on to this community input and concerns.
Ask if there's any community input or
Is there any
concerns.
community input? Any concerns from the community?
Not for me.
There are none. We'll move forward. Old business. We have a request for a 40-foot width of a lot variance. The previous variance was for 32 feet at the setback line of 125 feet, required in the zoning ordinance of the town of Kingston Springs, Article 7, Section 7.060, subpart of A for the parcel located in Sims Height Road, map 99, parcel 2.07, containing 1.06 acres. The property is zoned R1A and it's a low-density residential district. The measurements were presented to us, and that they were asking for originally 32 feet, went back and did some remeasurements, and the actual measurement is actually 40 feet that they need. It is a doable thing.
The variance they are requesting is 40 feet from the 125-foot lot width. They have produced a plat that gives the definitive measurements of the lot. This is a lot of record. If it were not a lot of record, they could not build on it, but it is. It predated the zoning ordinance. So they're requesting a variance of 40 feet from the 125 feet lot width at the setback line variance.
Any comments?
Based on earlier discussions, not to prolong the meeting, but since this was already plotted prior to this ordinance, there's really not a whole lot that we can do about it.
That is correct. Because it is a lot of record and preceded the zoning ordinance, the purpose of requesting the variance is because it's required under the zoning ordinance because it is an existing lot of record. The secondary reason for requesting the variance is that the lot would be shown as non-compliant if it were financed, if it were insured, or if it were sold. So this cures the flaw in the zoning for the owner and applicant.
And if there were another lot that came available up there, they wouldn't, unless it was predetermined prior to the date of this ordinance, if they fell outside of that predetermined date, they may not be able to get this variance. They wouldn't be
Correct.
granted.
If they could not be qualified under the regulations as a lot of record,
Right.
then they could not qualify for
Okay.
this variance.
Just
So
wanted
it's
to make
not a
sure.
district-wide consideration.
Okay.
These
Just
lots are
wanted to
pretty
make
rare.
sure.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion, yeah, to.
Please be specific in the measurements required by the statute.
Okay. To allow the request for the 40-foot width of variance
From the setback.
from, okay, yeah, from the setback line of 125 feet required in Article 7, Section 7.060, Subpart A, for the parcel on Sim Heights Road, map 99, parcel 2.07, to allow that
Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Questions?
Roll call.
Comments?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Bob Sanders, aye.
Bob Sanders?
Aye.
Ginger, not here. Joanna Gupton?
Aye.
Jane Polanski, aye. The motion has been passed. Move forward. Oh, good. All right.
Next time.
Motion passed. New business. We have a request for a variance on a lot from 15,000 square feet of 694 square feet at 267 West Kingston Springs Road. Sharon, can you give us a little background on that, please?
I can. This property is located just down the street. It's a triangular lot. It's located in an R2 medium density zoning district where the minimum lot size in that district is 15,000 square feet. At some point around 10 years ago, the state widened West Kingston Springs Road. They took a portion of that lot in order to do the curb rollout for that area. Through no fault of the applicant, his lot has now been reduced to 14,306 square feet. He needs 15,000. The variance requirements of our ordinance allow us to grant him a variance to the lot size requirement of 15,000 square feet as long as we don't reduce the requirement below 6,000 square feet in this district, because this is not something that he caused himself. It was done by the state when they widened the road. Any other questions on that? So you're granting, the request is to grant a variance of 694 square feet from the 15,000 square foot lot requirement.
How will that affect the landowner or future landowners, should they want to build anything on that piece of property if it's, if the variance is changed to
Well,
be only 14,000?
It's 14,306 square feet is the lot size.
Correct.
It affects them not at all. The minimum lot size requirement is a descriptor in the zoning district for R2. It has nothing to do with whether or not the lot is buildable. They have submitted plans in addition to this request to build a structure on that lot. The largest structure, how it affects them, they have to reduce the size of the structure footprint on the ground. In this particular case, the largest structure footprint for one story is 900 square feet, because we also have to accommodate the setbacks still for the side, front, and rear setback. They also have to accommodate any utility easements that are presently on the property or would be required. They also have to accommodate 2 parking spaces, which are required by the ordinance. They also have to accommodate a step tank for the sewer system. So all of that has been submitted in a drawing, and it's attached in your packet that shows that it will not be a 1-story house. There's no minimum house size other than the building code. The building code, we calculated it once from the requirements for a restroom, cooking facilities, and sleeping facility, which is all the building code requires for a habitable structure. And it's 386 square feet. They are able to fit a 900 square foot footprint, which means they can have a basement underneath that. They can have the 900 square foot of the first floor. They could also have 2-story above that. So they have submitted a plan that has 2 stories that allows them to build an 1,800 square foot house on that lot and fit it within that framework. Again, if this were the fault of the owner, if the owner had subdivided the property and rendered the lot too small, he would not qualify for a variance, because that's an action taken by the property owner. This action to reduce the size of this lot was taken by the state of Tennessee in order to acquire right-of-way to avoid the Doris Farm across the road, in order to make that curve more tenable coming into downtown. So
And-
the state took the property.
And what about any utility or easements or anything else? Are those involved in this piece of property?
They are not. Utility easements are established. The right-of-ways are reserved for future utility expansion. We are not aware, and the plat did not produce any utility easements so far on that property at all. So the surveyor furnished the plat, Mr. Kane completed the survey. But the sewer is available at the road, on West Kingston Springs Road, the main sewer line. So he will have to install a step tank, which was accounted for in his site plan. A service line from that step tank to the house, and a service line from the step tank to the main sewer line. The water lines are in the direction control 2nd South Cheatham. The driveway itself will face and back out onto Cemetery Road rather than West Kingston Springs Road, because to put a driveway at that location on West Kingston Springs Road would present a public safety challenge, not only for the resident, but also for the people driving on the road. So we have looked at the site plan they have provided in preparation for a building permit. They meet all the requirements. The lot is the building. If this variance is granted, again, it's through no fault of the applicant, which is that is the line that we have to meet in order to grant a variance to the lot size. The legislation allows us to vary a lot down to 6,000 square feet in buildable space. He is asking for a reduction of 694 square feet to 14,306 square feet, which, to give you context, is larger than many of the lots that exist in Kingston Park. So, staff, if it gives you a comfort level, I would recommend approval of this. If it were something that the property owner did to encumber the lot, then I would recommend against it because it's not a doable variance, but he did not.
Another question I have.
Sure.
Cemetery Road, is that
Is that
in
what-
one way or is
It's
it
two-way.
still two-way?
Just do it.
Okay, still two-way.
But it's very seldom ever used. It's used by some, but not to a great extent.
Cemetery Road itself is probably one of the more, that section of Cemetery Road where it triangles with
Right.
both Maple Street and West Kingston Springs Road
Right.
and Cemetery Road is very rarely used.
Right.
People would usually turn out, come up Maple, and go out to West Kingston Springs Road to Y. In this particular case, one of the restrictions staff requested from the surveyor was to restrict the connection of the driveway from West Kingston Springs Road.
Right.
And the lot itself is triangular in shape, which means it comes to a point in the rear. So at the rear, there's no potential for getting a driveway onto Maple Street because it comes to a point. So the only other avenue for access from this lot to any public road is Cemetery Road that is usable and viable for this lot.
And with this variance and with that 900 square foot footprint of this house and this driveways, is there an opportunity or has there been a request to have an outside storage building or anything else on this property?
No further structures will be allowed on the property that has been shared with the applicant because that maximizes what can be placed on the lot. There may be some potential for a small storage building, but you would have to request another variance in order to get it in a side yard because it's relegated to the rear of the yard. So he understands the compromise to this lot. So there are two partners, so to speak, in this discussion. The state rendered the lot unbuildable when it took part of his property. It's a lot of record because it existed long before that happened. But it's through no fault of the applicant. It's a circumstance beyond the control of the property owner that this occurred. He and his family have owned this lot for quite some time. At some point, there was a house there. Sometime around the time that the state widened the road, that house was removed, which then rendered the lot unbuildable. It gave up that grandfather status that we've spent a lot of time explaining to everybody. That only exists as long as you don't touch it. So once that happened, that went away. So in normal circumstances, I would say you bought a lot that's not buildable. But in this particular case, it wasn't the fault of the applicant with the lot size. He did not cause that to happen.
That is correct.
Need to vote.
I'm just concerned at the fact that he knew what he was getting into, and yet now he's coming to ask him for a variance when he knew that that lot was not buildable.
They owned the lot when there was a house on it. The house was.
When David
removed
Cummings
in order-
lived there?
Correct, that's,
The original house that was there was too close to the area where the state wanted to widen the road, so the house came down. This house has been in their family for many, many years.
There was a house there.
So,
I knew the guy that lived there very well.
and when I tell you, Madam Chairman, that it's not the fault of the applicant, I looked at every one of those four forms before I made that recommendation. Because variances, as I've shared with you in the past, using on sort of the southern term should be as rare as hen's teeth. It shouldn't happen very often. And only if they can be legitimately justified.
Well, we may see this one come up again, should they decide to put an outbuilding on the property.
It will not. That application would not qualify and would not be forwarded to the board. They've maximized the use of the lot. That will be noted on the permit file.
So there will be no variance
There
moving
will be
forward.
no future variances that are available
On
to
this
this property. Having an accessory structure is a luxury. It is not entitled. Putting a principal structure on it is entitled. It's by right.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You're certainly welcome.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
I'd like to make a motion that we pass this variance.
There's second.
What's the motion?
Sorry, I'm a little bit ahead of myself. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'd like to make a motion that we pass this variance, which is variance,
600.
There's a lot of
lot of record to, on this size of this lot, to grant a variance of 694 square feet at 267 West Kingston Springs Road.
If you don't mind, if I might suggest, Mr. Sanders, add 694 square feet from the minimum lot size requirement of 15,000 square feet.
Yeah. To add a 694 square foot variance from the 15,000 square foot requirement on this ordinance. I make a motion that we grant this ordinance.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
All opposed?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Anything that's regulatory has to be.
Call for voting members. Bob Sanders?
Aye.
Judy Hockenberger? Absent. Bridget Wilson? Absent. Jane Polanski? Aye. Joanna Gupton?
Aye.
Motion passed.
I will receive a copy of the minutes once they're created and signed.
okay.
Also, your building permit can move forward.
Sounds good, thank you.
And we welcome the improvement to the city.
I appreciate that.
I've stared at it for a long time.
Moving forward with this plan. That'd
It's gonna be
great.
kind of neat. I wouldn't mind seeing a tall skinny right there.
I don't know about a tall skinny. I told my architect I want something quaint, something that fits
Well,
the
good for
city
you.
area. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see
We're
what he
glad
can
to
do.
have you back in the community.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That'd be awesome.
You may stay or go home with your.
It's your choice.
Fancy.
It's my choice. You
Your
know what?
choice.
Let me see this one through a bit.
All right.
First one, might as well.
Okay. Our second order of business tonight for new business, we have a request for a variance from the requirement to locate an accessory structure, which is an above-ground pool, constructed in the side yard of the property located at 191 Mary Log Road. Sharon is going to give us greater detail, give you an idea of why they are requesting that it be constructed in the side yard.
So at some point, many, many years ago, in excess of 30, someone constructed an above-ground pool in the side yard of the property located at 191 Mary Log Lane without a permit. The neighbor next door protested at some point and alleged that the pool was sitting partially on their property. A survey was done in the early 2000s, submitted to the Planning Commission and approved, that did indeed show that the pool had been installed partially on the neighbor's lot. So they did what's known as a revision to a minor plat, where the line was jogged out to accommodate the pool on one side and then jogged in on the other side at an equal distance in order to accommodate the location of the pool. That was in 2003, I believe, that occurred. Fast forward many years, the house was sold. The new owner requested a building permit to do some remodeling. In the research of the permit, it was discovered that the pool was in the side yard without a permit. So here we are. As in many cases where these issues surface, where someone buys a property, relies on the disclosure statement they're given by the real estate agent that is completed by the property seller, that there are no known defects or projects that have been completed without a permit. That is the case in this one. The applicant provided me with a copy of the disclosure statement which states that nothing was ever done on this property without a permit. So that obviously at this point is not the case. So as we do with all cases that come in that are problematic, we attempted to figure out a way to see if it could comply, one, if the applicant was willing to submit to the permit fee for the swimming pool and an inspection, two, and third, whether there was any flexibility available to them under the zoning ordinance. We'll try to resolve that first before we give a hard no. So in doing the research, one of the things that I always pull for properties that I look at is a topographical map. The topography in this area of Marilotta Lane is excessively steep. You couldn't locate a storage building, a swimming pool, a deck, or any other appurtenance in that backyard. In those circumstances, because that is a variable quantity under state law, due to excessive topography that is outside the control of the applicant, had the applicant at the time when the house was previously owned applied for a permit, they would have sought a variance to locate it in the side yard appropriately under the zoning ordinance. The fact that they didn't creates an issue for the new property owner who did not build the pool. So in this particular circumstance, what we normally do, as we did with a number of other cases when basements were finished out or other things happened that the applicant is not responsible for, we come to the Board of Zoning Appeals and state the following. In this case, there's the availability of a variance to locate the pool in the side yard due to the steep topography of the rear yard. Variances are not tied to individuals or individual circumstances. They are tied to the land. They follow the land. They travel with the land when it's sold again. Secondarily, the previous property owner, sometime before the sale, did adjust the plat, which was adopted by the Planning Commission to cure the transgression and the overlap of the pool on the adjacent property. They swapped yardage until they got it right. The third is the willingness of the current owner who recently purchased the house to apply for a swimming pool permit, submit to an inspection of the swimming pool to make sure it meets all of our safety and building codes, including the fact that it was never fenced or barriered in all of that time, which presents a hazard to the public. Any small child could wander in that yard and fall in the swimming pool because it's accessible from the street. So they've agreed to all of those terms. Staff recommendation is this is one of those that's a difficult call for almost everybody, but the flaw that created this situation does not reside with the current property owner. He bought it this way. And it was a failure of honest disclosure on the part of the seller that placed him in that position. And that's what we said. So he is requesting a variance, which is legally available for the location of the pool in the side yard due to the topography of the rear yard.
And the fence that is required to go around the pool is
At the-
compliant
Depending
with the
on
setbacks?
what this board rules. One, I don't want him to spend money on a fence or a permit or anything else until this board rules, because if the board rules not in his favor, the pool will be removed. He has to have a variance for it to stay in that spot. If the variance is not granted, then the rest of it is a new discussion. Does that make sense to everybody, or do you have questions? So, if this were the previous property owner, I would have instructed them to remove the pool, because they did it without a permit.
So
This young
he has
man-
adopted this pool,
Pardon?
he has adopted this pool that is currently there.
Well, he inherited it
Oh,
with the
should say.
deed,
Yes.
without any idea that there were issues with it, because he relied, again, Tennessee is a buyer beware state.
Right.
And the disclosure statement states that nothing was ever located on this property without a permit. It's a very common occurrence in this state.
Is there anything that would prevent this variance from occurring to that side property?
If he did not have a topographical issue in the rear yard that would prevent him from relocating this pool to the rear yard, then no, he would not have a claim for a variance. But the topography on that lot is so steep that you could not locate a pool on that lot in the rear. So if he had, let's say, started tomorrow, Chairman, and there was no pool there and he wanted a pool, if he came in to get a pool permit, there was no pool, topography would prevent him from putting it in that yard, and he would still be entitled to a variance, which is what makes this legally doable.
Right, and so by making this legally doable, it is compliant with the,
Is it currently compliant? No, but it will be if this variance is
variance is
granted.
passed,
Because
right.
if the variance is not granted, the only solution is to remove the pool.
right.
Okay?
And currently, there are no issues with any of his neighbors regarding that pool or any,
No, that was solved
City
with
issues.
replatting of the two properties that adjoined each other.
okay. Any comments?
No, not for me.
I say take it down, tear down the pool. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We've had this happen, I've been on this board for a long time. And we've had people build houses and been over the property line and everything, so. I don't think he did anything wrong, and I think, based on what you're saying, I'm inclined to vote for the variance, yes.
Okay, anyone have a motion to,
Grant a variance.
to grant a variance from the lot accessory structure with this above-ground pool to be placed in the side yard of the property at 191 Mary Long, based on the topography of the backyard.
Topographical
Makes it
limitations is the
impossible.
term you're looking for.
And this variance, the owner understands that it will bring him into compliance with standards, and that the,
He will
He
submit
will
to a
meet all
building
of his-
permit and inspection to
right,
to
he
make
will
sure.
meet the permit
pool
fees and the
complies.
inspection and meet the setbacks that are required.
Yes.
Second,
All right, all in favor, we'll take a roll call vote. Bob Sanders,
yes.
Ginger Hockenberger is absent, Richard Wilson absent, Jane Plenty, yes. Aye. Joanna Gupton?
Yes.
Motion for the variance, located at 191 Marylog Lane,
It's
is
approved.
passed.
That's all I have for now.
I do not have anything else. Anybody else has anything?
I do have one staff observation. One of the kindest things that you can do as representatives of the community on the Board of Zoning Appeals out of kindness to your neighbors is to advise them, please ask before you do it. Because it's very costly for people to do these things after the fact. If this young man had done this himself, his permit fees would double, because that's required by the ordinance as a fine, and it can get extraordinarily expensive and complicated to resolve. The Palafingal case that you heard most recently took us about 6 months to resolve. So a building permit, always just call and ask. If you ask, we'll give you the information that you need.
John, right up here at the curve, this, oh, I'm sorry, do we
You're gonna
need to
have
adjourn?
Any other discussion?
Any,
you'll have
any,
to
any
dismiss.
other, comments?
Not for me.
Not for me.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I second.
Okay, aye.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting so adjourned.